They say leaving quietly is the kindest way to go. No explanations, no tears. Just slip out the door before anyone notices you're gone. That's what I told myself as I folded the letter for the 5th time and slid it into the envelope. My name signed at the bottom felt foreign, like it belonged to someone braver than me. Outside my window, the little town of Brooksville was coming alive in a way I hadn't seen in years. The church bells had been ringing since dawn. Strings of white and gold streamers fluttered across Main Street, swaying in the late spring breeze. Somewhere in the distance, children's laughter blended with the faint hum of a string quartet rehearsing. Today was Sheriff James Callahan's wedding day, and I was planning to disappear. For almost a decade, James had been my best friend, my confidant, and my secret heartbreak. When he first put on that badge, I stood by him as he grew into a man the whole town admired, but over the years, I'd learned to swallow my feelings, to sit quietly in the corner of his life and applaud every milestone even when it felt like a knife twisting deeper. When he proposed to Lila 3 months ago, I promised myself I'd be happy for him. She was everything I wasn't graceful, polished the kind of woman who turned heads without even trying. And I was just Emma Green, the town's elementary school teacher, with a cluttered desk and a soft spot for stray animals. I never belonged in his world. So I decided to leave. At first, I told myself it was just for the summer, a little time away to clear my head. But the more I thought about it, the more I knew I couldn't come back. Not after watching him promise his forever to someone else. That morning, I woke early and packed a single suitcase. The envelope with my resignation letter sat on top, its crisp edges, staring back at me like a silent dare. I'd leave it on James's desk at the sheriff's office before the ceremony. No goodbye, no explanation. He'd be too busy to notice anyway. By the time he returned from his honeymoon, I'd be long gone. It was supposed to be simple, but nothing ever is. The sheriff's office was unusually quiet when I arrived. Most of the deputies had taken the morning off to help with the wedding preparations, leaving the place hollow and still. I walked past James's door without looking in, clutching the envelope so tightly the edges dug into my palm. "Just drop it off and leave," I whispered under my breath. But then I remembered the files I'd left in the back room. My teaching certificates, medical records, things I couldn't afford to leave behind. One quick stop. In and out. The records room was dim and smelled faintly of old paper and cedar. I flipped on the light and began rummaging through the cabinets. That's when I heard it, the door clicking shut behind me. At first, I didn't think much of it. Doors in this old building were temperamental. But when I turned the handle to leave, it wouldn't budge. "Come on," I muttered, twisting harder. The knob refused to turn. I shoved my weight against the door, but it held firm, as stubborn as my own foolish heart. That's when I heard a voice behind me. "Emma." I froze. My pulse roared in my ears as I turned, and there he was, James, standing in the doorway that wasn't supposed to open. Shirt sleeves rolled up tie, draped around his neck like an afterthought. He looked calm, collected, except for the faint crease in his brow. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his voice low, steady. The envelope in my hand felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I forced a smile. "Just grabbing some files." His eyes flicked to the envelope. On my wedding day. And in that moment, I knew. There was no quiet exit left for me. I didn't mean to make a sound, but the soft click of the latch echoed like a gunshot in the quiet room. I turned the handle again this time with more force, but it didn't budge. No, 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 I whispered, pressing my shoulder to the door. It creaked slightly, but refused to open. Panic clawed at my throat. The room felt smaller, the air thicker. I had promised myself this would be a clean escape. No drama. No last-minute run-ins. And yet, here I was, stuck. I closed my eyes, willing my heart to slow. It didn't listen. Then a voice came from behind me. Emma. I froze. Every muscle in my body locked in place, as if his voice alone had turned me to stone. Slowly, I turned. And there he was. James stood near the old file cabinets. Sleeves rolled up tie, draped loose around his neck, like he couldn't decide whether to wear it or throw it away. His jacket was gone, leaving just the crisp white shirt that somehow made him look less like the sheriff, and more like the boy I used to know. Except, he wasn't a boy anymore. "What are you doing here?" he asked softly. The envelope in my hand suddenly felt like it weighed 100 pounds. My fingers curled tighter around it, as if I could crush the truth hiding inside. I came for some papers, I said, forcing my voice steady. Didn't mean to get in the way. His eyes flicked toward the door, then back to me. The knob's been sticking for months. You've got to lift and turn at the same time. He stepped forward, his boots silent against the old wooden floor. My pulse pounded louder with every step he took. "It's okay," I said quickly, retreating a little. "I can figure it out." But my hands betrayed me, fumbling with the handle, like I'd never opened a door in my life. "You're shaking," James said gently. "I'm fine." "You don't look fine." His voice was calm, but there was a flicker of something beneath it. Something that made my stomach twist. I took another step back, clutching the envelope tighter to my chest. "Emma." His eyes fell on my hands. "What's in there?" "It's nothing," I said too fast. His brow furrowed slightly. "You've never lied to me before. Don't start now." The words hit harder than I expected. I opened my mouth to respond, but nothing came out. His words hung heavy in the air. "You've never lied to me before, Emma. Don't start now." I gripped the envelope tighter, feeling the edges bite into my palm. The silence between us felt louder than the thunder rumbling outside. "I'm not lying," I said softly. But even to my own ears, it didn't sound convincing. James tilted his head slightly, studying me, the way he did when trying to coax a confession out of a nervous witness. He had a way of looking right through you, quiet, patient, unrelenting. I just needed a few papers, I added, forcing my voice steady. Didn't want to bother anyone on your big day. Bother. His brow furrowed. "Emma, you've never bothered me. Not once." I turned back to the door, pretending to fiddle with the stubborn handle. Anything to avoid the weight of his gaze. But deep down, I knew there was no escaping this. Not here. Not now. Flashback. It wasn't supposed to rain that day. I was 21, fresh out of college, and terrified as I drove into Brooksville for my first job interview at the elementary school. A sudden summer storm rolled in like an ambush, drenching my little hatchback. I had no umbrella, no raincoat, and absolutely no plan for how to show up looking professional when my hair was plastered to my face, and my shoes were soaked through. When I finally stumbled into the sheriff's office to ask for directions, yes, I was that lost. I must have looked like a drowned rat. And that's when I first met James Callahan. He wasn't the sheriff yet, just a deputy in a crisp tan uniform, leaning over a map spread across his desk. He glanced up as I entered, and instead of laughing or looking annoyed, he smiled. "A little wet out there, huh?" he said, standing to grab a towel from the staff lounge. I laughed nervously, clutching my soggy purse. "You could say that." Here he offered the towel with a kindness that felt disarming. Looks like we've got a fighter. A fighter. You made it this far through the storm, didn't you? That counts for something in this town. I'd later learn that was James in a nutshell. He had this quiet way of making people feel seen, like you weren't just another face passing through. Back to present. That same softness was in his eyes now, though it felt sharper, heavier somehow. "Emma," he said gently, "are you really here for papers? Or is there something else you're not saying?" My lips parted, but no sound came out. I wanted to tell him everything. About the nights I stayed awake rehearsing conversations I never had the courage to start. About the way I memorized every small detail, how he took his coffee, how his voice changed when he was tired. About the letter in my hand that wasn't just words on paper, but a piece of my heart I couldn't carry anymore. But I said none of it, because once the words were out, there'd be no putting them back. "I should go," I murmured. "You've got a wedding to get ready for." James didn't move. Outside, the storm lashed harder against the windows, and for the first time in years, I wondered if maybe he could hear the sound of my heart breaking. His words lingered in the dim room, heavy like the storm outside. "Why are your hands shaking, Emma?" I tightened my grip on the envelope, hoping he wouldn't notice how my knuckles had turned white. "I'm fine," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "You don't look fine." James stepped closer. The air between us felt different now, thicker, charged with something I couldn't name. I forced a laugh, light and brittle. "It's just the storm. Makes me jumpy." But we both knew that wasn't true. He reached for the door handle and jiggled it, trying the old lift and turn trick he'd mentioned earlier. The handle creaked, but held firm. "Stubborn as ever," he muttered. I stood a few feet away, willing the door to magically open and release me from this slow unraveling. "You ever notice," he said, "how doors like this only get stuck at the worst times?" I forced another smile. "Yeah, terrible timing." He glanced back at me then, and I swear it felt like his eyes could see straight through me. "Yes, let me try," I said quickly, stepping forward. James moved aside, watching as I tugged at the handle, my hands fumbling clumsily. "Easy," he said softly. "You'll just hurt your wrist like that." "I'm fine." I snapped more harshly than I intended. He raised an eyebrow but didn't comment. Instead, he leaned back against the wall, arms crossed loosely over his chest. "Emma," he said after a long pause. "Yeah, what's in the envelope?" My heart skipped a beat. "Just school paperwork. I lied too fast. End-of-year stuff." His eyes didn't leave mine. "School paperwork. On my wedding day, I didn't mean for you to see me. I was just passing through. His tone was calm, almost too calm. "Funny, because I checked my office earlier. You weren't there." I opened my mouth, but no words came out. James took a slow step toward me. "You're not here for files, are you?" "Emma," he said gently but firmly. "Talk to me." I turned my gaze to the floor, unable to hold his eyes any longer. If I spoke now, I'd say too much. If I stayed silent, I might break anyway. The storm outside rattled the windows, thunder rolling like a warning drum. "I can't do this right now," I whispered. "You can't do what this." My voice cracked. "Standing here, pretending like this isn't hard." "Why is it hard?" he asked softly. I bit my lips so hard I tasted copper. He glanced at the envelope again. "Whatever's in there," he said, "you don't want me to see it." "Do you?" I shook my head faintly. "Then why are you here, Emma?" I didn't answer, because the truth was louder than any words I could say. His eyes stayed on me unblinking like he already knew the answer, but needed to hear me say it. "Emma," he said softly, "what's in the envelope?" I felt my throat tighten, my heart pounding so hard I thought he could hear it in the quiet room. "James, don't what?" His tone was calm, steady, but there was a weight in it that made my knees weak. "Don't ask. Don't push. Or don't find out what you're trying so hard to hide." I clutched the envelope tighter, my fingers trembling now. "It's nothing you need to worry about. That's not an answer." He took another step closer, and I instinctively stepped back until my shoulders hit the cold metal filing cabinet behind me. "Emma." There was no judgment in his voice, only quiet insistence. And somehow, that was worse. I had rehearsed this moment in my head 1,000 times, but in every version, he wasn't here. He was busy with his life, his fiancée, his perfect little world, where I was just another face in the crowd. But now he was standing in front of me, looking at me like I wasn't invisible. "Why are you shaking?" he asked again. "Please, James," I whispered. "Just let it go." "I can't," he said simply. I felt my defenses cracking the mask I'd worn for years, splintering under the weight of his gaze. "Is it about the wedding?" he asked carefully. "Yes," I said before I could stop myself. His brows knitted. "What about it?" I forced a shallow breath, trying to steady my voice, but it still came out raw. "I can't stay here anymore, James." He blinked. "What do you mean I held up the envelope between us?" My hands trembling so badly now that I thought I might drop it. "This is my resignation." The words hung in the air like a gunshot. For a long moment, he didn't move. His eyes darted from my face to the envelope, then back again. "You're quitting?" "Yes. Why?" His voice was lower, now almost breaking. "Emma, why would you do that?" I swallowed hard, my chest tightening like a vice. Because I can't stand in the shadows anymore. Because I'm tired of smiling when you talk about her. Because loving you silently has been eating me alive. But I didn't say any of that. Instead, I whispered, "It's just time." And time for what he asked, his tone sharper now. Time to walk away without a word. After everything he stopped himself, exhaling heavily. "Emma, if I did something to drive you away, tell me. Don't just..." He gestured toward the envelope helplessly. "Don't just disappear." The storm outside cracked with a flash of lightning, illuminating the faint worry lines etched into his face. "Tell me the truth," James said. "Please." I looked at him. Really looked. At the man who'd been my anchor in this little town. The one person who could make me feel safe with just a smile. And I realized there was no point hiding anymore. For a moment, the only sound in the room was the storm, raging outside. James didn't move. He didn't even blink. He just stood there staring at me like he couldn't quite believe what he'd heard. And honestly, I couldn't either. The words had slipped out before I could stop them, raw and unpolished, like they'd been hiding in my chest for years, waiting for the moment I lost control. "I can't do it anymore," I whispered, my voice cracking. "I can't keep smiling and pretending like it doesn't hurt. I can't watch you marry her, James." I clutched the edge of the filing cabinet behind me, my nails digging into the cold metal, as if it could anchor me to the ground. "I've tried to be happy for you. God, I've tried so hard, but every time I hear her name, every time I see you looking at her like she's your whole world, My throat tightened painfully. A part of me breaks. James took a step forward, then stopped, his hand hovering near his side, like he didn't know what to do with it. Emma. His voice was hoarse. I shook my head quickly, blinking back the heat rising in my eyes. Don't. Please don't say anything. Just let me get this out before I lose my nerve. He nodded faintly, his lips pressed into a thin line. I know I don't have the right. I continued, my words tumbling faster now. I know you're happy, and I don't want to ruin that. But the truth is, I drew a sharp breath. I wish it was me. The sentence hung in the air like a fragile glass ornament, one wrong move away from shattering. Je voudrais te surface. James's eyes widened slightly, and for the first time since I'd met him all those years ago, I couldn't read his expression. Shock. Hurt. Something else entirely. Whatever it was, it froze him in place. I wish it was me, I said again, softer this time. I wish I was the one you were waiting for at the end of that aisle. I wish I was the one wearing that dress, standing there with all those people watching. I wish... My voice broke completely. I wish you had seen me before it was too late. The room felt unbearably still. I wanted him to say something, anything, to yell, to laugh, to tell me I was crazy or selfish or cruel. But he didn't. He just stood there, his chest rising and falling unsteadily, his hands curling slightly at his sides, like he was holding himself back. And in his eyes, I saw something fracture. You. His voice trailed off. He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing. Why didn't you ever tell me? Because it wouldn't have changed anything, I whispered. You don't know that? Yes, I do. I forced a hollow laugh, though it tasted like salt and regret. You've been in love with her for years. You're about to marry her, James. What good would it have done to say it out loud? The storm cracked louder, a flash of lightning illuminating his face. He didn't look calm anymore. He didn't look like the man who always had the right words or the steady hand. He looked lost. For a long moment, James said nothing. His jaw tightened, his fingers flexed slightly, like he wanted to speak, but couldn't find the words. I stayed frozen in place, afraid that if I moved or even breathed too loudly, the fragile spell of the room would shatter. Finally, he spoke. Emma, you think I've been happy all this time, don't you? His voice was low, almost hoarse. I blinked at him, caught off guard. Aren't you? He let out a breath that sounded more like a laugh, though there was no humor in it. I thought I was. Or maybe I just kept telling myself I was because it seemed easier. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing a few steps before leaning against the wall. His shoulders slumped in a way I'd never seen before. You've always seen me as the guy who has it all together. The sheriff, the steady one, the man with a plan. But the truth is, he looked at me then, and there was something raw in his expression. The truth is, Emma, I've been missing something for a long time. I opened my mouth to ask what he meant, but he kept talking, his words gaining momentum like a dam breaking. Lila is amazing. She's smart, kind, beautiful. On paper, she's everything a man could ever want. And yet... His voice faltered. When I picture my future, when I imagine coming home every night, it's not her I see. He caught himself, exhaling sharply. The flashback. I remembered a night 3 years ago during a late summer training drill. The entire department was spread thin, coordinating an emergency evacuation drill across the county. Most of us hadn't eaten since breakfast, but I was too focused on making sure every last volunteer was accounted for to notice my own hunger. Hours later, I was alone in the command tent, cross-checking rosters under the dim light of a lantern. Then James appeared, holding a takeout bag. "You missed dinner," he said, simply placing the bag on the table. I looked up, startled. "You didn't have to, Emma." He interrupted gently. "You take care of everyone else. Let someone take care of you for once." I didn't realize it at the time, but that moment lodged itself deep inside me. A quiet ache I carried ever since. Back to present. "You've always been there," James said, breaking through my memory. "Every time I needed someone. Every time I didn't even realize I needed someone. It was you." My chest tightened. "Then why?" My voice wavered. "Why her?" He looked down at his hands, flexing them like they could explain what words couldn't. "Because you were untouchable," he admitted. "You were my anchor, my constant. I couldn't risk losing you, not even for the chance at something more." The sound was faint at first. A soft rap against the wood, barely audible over the rain hammering the roof. But then it came again, louder, sharper. Knock, knock, knock. "Sheriff Callahan, you in there?" James flinched like someone had slapped him awake. His hand instinctively went to his pocket, where his phone buzzed violently, lighting up the dim room with a glow. I saw the name flash across the screen. Leela, his bride-to-be. "You should answer that," I said quietly. He didn't move. His thumb hovered over the screen, the vibration still pulsing in his palm. Another knock echoed through the door. "Sir, everything okay in there? The ceremony's about to start." Wah. My chest felt like it was collapsing in on itself. "James." I tried to keep my voice steady. "You need to go." He shook his head slowly, as if the motion hurt. "Not yet. Yes, now." I stepped closer and pressed the envelope, the one I had been clutching all morning, into his hands. "You have a whole town waiting for you. A woman waiting for you. Don't ruin this because of me." His jaw tightened. "Stop saying that," he said softly. "Saying what? That this is all your fault? That you're some kind of mistake I have to avoid? You're not." His phone buzzed again, breaking the moment like glass shattering. This time, it wasn't just Lila. The screen lit up with another name, Ethan. Best man. "You can't stay here," I whispered, fighting the lump rising in my throat. "If you miss your own wedding, you'll regret it. And I can't be the reason for that." He turned to me, then his blue-gray eyes darker than I'd ever seen them. What if I regret walking out there instead? The knocks grew louder, now more insistent. "Sheriff, they're waiting. It's almost time." "Yes." I shook my head, my hands trembling. "This isn't fair," I said, my voice breaking. "You don't get to stand here and say things you can't take back. Not when she's out there in a white dress waiting for you." James closed his eyes, dragging a hand down his face. "You think this is easy for me?" he said hoarsely. "You think I haven't spent years telling myself I was doing the right thing, choosing the right life?" Another knock, harder this time. James Ethan's voice called through the door. "You good man. The guests are seated. Lila's asking for you." I stepped back, forcing myself to put space between us. "Go," I whispered. "Please, don't make this any harder than it already is." His phone vibrated again, and for a moment I thought he was going to answer. But he didn't. He just stood there, shoulders squared like a man facing down an impossible choice. The knocking had stopped, but the silence it left behind was even louder. James stood with his back to the door, his phone still buzzing in his hand. He hadn't answered it. He hadn't moved, and neither had I. The air between us felt electric heavy with things unsaid. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears so loud, it drowned out the storm outside. He turned to me slowly, and there was something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Not the calm authority of the sheriff, not the easy warmth of my best friend, but a quiet, dangerous kind of resolve that made my stomach twist. "What if I stayed?" he asked softly. I blinked at him, stunned. What if I didn't go out there? His voice was steady, but his jaw tightened like he was holding back a flood. "James, don't. Don't what? Don't say things you don't mean. Don't stand there and make this harder than it already is." "Ja, Sardai." He stepped closer. "I'm not trying to make it harder," he said, his tone deepening. "I'm trying to tell you that maybe I've been lying to myself for too long." I took a step back instinctively, my back hitting the filing cabinet again. "Don't do this," I whispered. "Not now. Not 1 hour before your wedding." His eyes didn't waver. "Emma, listen to me. I've spent years convincing myself I was on the right path, that marrying Lila was the logical choice, the safe choice. But every time I look at you..." "Stop." My voice cracked. "Every time I imagine my future, you're in it, not her." My breath caught painfully in my chest. "You can't say that," I said, my hands trembling. "Not unless you're absolutely sure." "I am sure," he said firmly. "No, you're not," I shouted suddenly, my voice echoing off the walls. "You're scared. You're standing here with your whole life waiting for you outside that door, and you're scared of what it means to walk through it." Setting das, he flinched, but didn't back away. "Maybe I am scared," he admitted. "But not of marrying Lila. I'm scared of walking out there and realizing I left the one person I should have fought for standing in this room." My throat tightened, and I shook my head violently. "You don't get to say that to me, James. Not now. Not unless you're ready to throw everything away." He took one final step, closing the space between us. I could feel the warmth radiating off him, the faint scent of his cologne I'd memorized over the years. "Then tell me to go," he said, his voice low and even. "What? Tell me to walk out that door and marry her. Tell me this is all in my head, and I swear I'll go." I stared at him. My lips parted, but no sound came out. Because deep down, I didn't want him to go. And he knew it. His phone buzzed again, the vibration sharp and insistent in the stillness. This time, I saw her name flash across the screen. Leela. Her smiling face lit up against the glass. Perfect, poised, beautiful. I watched James stare at it, his thumb hovering over the green button. And for a moment I thought he'd answer. He always answered her. "You should pick up," I said softly, though the words scraped my throat like broken glass. Still, he didn't move. "James, I tried again, forcing my voice to steady. "She's waiting for you. This isn't fair to her. Or to me. I know," he whispered. His eyes stayed locked on the screen, but I could see the storm raging behind them. "I know it's not fair," he said again, louder this time. "And God, I've been trying so hard to do the right thing." "And then do it now," I said, my chest tightening with every syllable. "Walk out that door. Marry her. Forget this ever happened." The phone buzzed again, harder this time, like even the universe was screaming at him to choose. And then he pressed decline. Then my breath caught. The screen went dark. The silence that followed felt deafening. "James." My voice was barely a whisper. He looked up at me then, and I swear I didn't recognize him. Not the man who always had control, who carried the weight of a whole town without flinching. This man looked raw, stripped down, real. "So I can't," he said simply. "You can't. What I can't answer her call. I can't stand at that altar and pretend anymore. I can't keep lying to her, or to myself." I shook my head, a mix of fear and anger twisting in my chest. "Don't do this because of me," I said. "You're panicking. It's the storm, the timing. This isn't real. It's the only thing that's ever felt real." His words landed like a strike of lightning, leaving me stunned and breathless. The sound of metal scraping against metal made me flinch. Someone was working the lock from the outside. "Sheriff, you in there?" A deputy called, his voice muffled by the thick wooden door. We finally got the tools to pry it open. James stiffened but didn't say a word. I felt my stomach sink. This was it. The moment when reality would crash back in like a tidal wave and wash away everything that had just happened in this room. He'd step out. She'd be waiting. And I'd fade back into the shadows where I belonged. "You should go," I whispered, my hands twisting the hem of my shirt. He didn't look at me. For a second, I thought he hadn't heard. Then the latch clicked. The door creaked open an inch, and a sliver of light spilled into the dim room. "Sir, you okay in there?" the deputy asked again. James took a step forward. I held my breath. The back of his shirt brushed my arm as he passed, and my whole body tensed like I could freeze this moment and trap us here forever. But I couldn't. I stared at the floor, blinking fast as heat burned behind my eyes. It was over. All of it, the words we'd said, the confessions that had slipped out like fragile secrets. None of it mattered anymore. He was leaving. I forced myself to speak, though my voice trembled. "Good luck out there." He stopped, just for a heartbeat. But then he kept walking. The door creaked wider as the deputy peered in. "Sir, they're waiting for you at the chapel. Miss Lila's starting to worry." James nodded faintly. "Yeah," he said. His voice was low, unreadable. "I'll be right there." I felt something inside me crack. It took every ounce of strength I had left not to fall apart right then and there. He stepped through the doorway, and just like that, the space felt emptier than I thought possible. Yet I turned away, hugging my arms tight around myself. The tears came hot and fast, no longer held back by sheer willpower. I'd promised myself I wouldn't cry, that I'd leave with my head held high. But my heart hadn't gotten the memo. I didn't hear his footsteps anymore. The door was still open, the stormlight pouring in from outside, but there was no sound of him moving forward. For a split second, I thought maybe I had imagined it. But then, Emma, his voice, low, rough, it made me freeze. Tessa. I turned slowly, and there he was, still standing in the doorway. His shoulders tense, one hand gripping the frame, like he was anchoring himself there. "I can't do it," he said softly. That my breath caught. "You can't." What to? James turned to face me fully, his expression raw in a way I had never seen. "If I walk out that door," he said, his voice steady, "but breaking at the edges, it won't be because of you." I swallowed hard, unable to look away. "It'll be because I don't have the courage to choose the one thing that makes me feel alive." His words hit me like a wave, and I felt my knees weaken. "You can't say that," I whispered. "Not when I mean it." He took a step back into the room, his boots heavy on the old floorboards. I've spent years doing what's expected of me, choosing the safe path, smiling for photos and saying all the right things. But none of that has ever felt like this. I shook my head, trying to find my voice. "James, if you walk away from her, there's no going back. You'll ruin everything." "Maybe it's already ruined," he said quietly. "If I have to marry someone with half my heart, what kind of life is that for me, for her?" He ran a hand over his face, and for the first time I saw fear in his eyes, not of making a mistake, but of finally doing the right thing. "You were always the one," he said suddenly. "I just didn't let myself see it." And the air left my lungs in a shaky breath. "Don't say that, unless you're sure," I whispered. I've never been more sure of anything he said. Another voice called from the hallway. "Sheriff Callahan, we really need you out here." The door creaked as the wind rattled it harder, but James didn't turn. He didn't even flinch. "I can't leave this room pretending we're nothing," he said. My hands trembled as I clutched the edge of the filing cabinet. "Then, what happens now?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He took a step closer, closing the gap between us. "That depends," he said softly. "On what?" "On whether you'll let me fight for this," he said. "For us." The door clicked shut, and with it, every last shred of hope seemed to vanish. I sank slowly to the floor, my back pressed against the cold metal filing cabinet. My legs wouldn't hold me anymore. The envelope, my resignation, was still clutched tight in my hand. The paper crumpled now from how hard I'd been gripping it. This was it. The ending I had always feared but secretly prepared for. Nihi was gone. Out there somewhere in the hall, probably already smoothing down his sleeves and putting that practiced smile back on his face. The sheriff, the man of the hour, the man about to marry someone perfect, someone who wasn't me. A bitter laugh caught in my throat. "Why did I even come here?" I whispered to the empty room. The sound of my own voice startled me. I closed my eyes, pressing the envelope to my chest, like it could stop my heart from breaking, and as if my mind wanted to torture me. It pulled me back to a night years ago. Flashback. The lights in the community hall had been dimmed, leaving only a soft golden glow from the string lights strung along the ceiling. We'd just wrapped up a grueling search and rescue drill, one that had left the entire department bone-tired, but quietly proud. I was standing off to the side, brushing dirt from my uniform, when James appeared in front of me. "Hey," he said, his voice warm in that way that always made me forget how to breathe. He held something in his hand. "This is for you." I blinked, surprised. It was a small brass medal. Nothing official, just a trinket engraved with the department's crest. "What's this for?" I asked. "For keeping everyone steady when I couldn't," he said simply. He pinned it to my jacket, his fingers brushing against my shoulder, for a fraction of a second too long. "You're the quiet glue that holds us all together, Emma. Don't think I don't notice." Even now, years later, I could still feel the weight of that little medal. Not on my jacket, but in my heart. Yes, back to present. A tear slipped down my cheek, and I didn't bother wiping it away. I'd been so foolish, hoping that one day he might look at me, not as the quiet support in the background, not as his dependable assistant, but as someone worth choosing. "Stupid," I murmured. A noise outside the door snapped me out of my thoughts. Footsteps, heavy boots on old floorboards. I froze, but no one came in. The footsteps passed, fading into silence. The room had gone so still, I could hear the rain sliding down the windows. It was over. I kept telling myself that gripping the crumpled envelope like it was the only thing tethering me to the ground. But then, the door creaked. I froze. Slowly, I looked up, and there he was. Nathan. His chest rose and fell in quick, uneven breaths, like he'd been running. His tie was gone. His shirt sleeves were wrinkled, and his eyes, God, his eyes looked like a man who had just set fire to everything behind him. "Emma." His voice cracked. I couldn't speak. "I told them," he said louder this time. "I told them the truth." My stomach dropped. What truth?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "That I can't marry her," he said. "That I won't stand in front of all those people and pretend I'm in love with someone else, when the only person I've ever—" He stopped, dragging a shaky hand down his face. "The only person I've ever really wanted is standing right here." The tears stung my eyes. "Don't say that," I whispered. "Not if you're going to walk away again." "I'm not walking away." He stepped closer, the weight of his presence pulling the air from my lungs. "They know," he said. "Lila knows. I told her everything." I blinked, stunned. You told her?" "Yes." His voice cracked again. "And do you know what she said?" I shook my head, unable to speak. She said she already knew. A tear slid down my cheek. Nathan took another step, close enough now that I could feel the heat radiating off him. "I should have done this years ago," he said softly, "but I was too much of a coward." He reached out his hand to me, palm open, fingers trembling. "Come with me," he said. "Please." I stared at his hand, my heart pounding so loud it felt like the only sound in the world. This "This doesn't feel real," I whispered. "It's real," he said. "It's the only thing that's ever been real." The air outside the room felt heavier, like all the oxygen in the building had shifted, settling on us. Nathan's hand was still warm in mine, his fingers wrapping tight like he was afraid I might vanish if he let go. "Are you sure?" I asked softly. His grip didn't loosen. I've never been more sure of anything he said. As we stepped into the hallway, voices hushed. Heads turned, eyes widened, whispers swirled around us like gusts of wind. "That's the sheriff." "Where's Lila? Who's she?" I felt my chest tighten. Every instinct told me to let go of his hand, to shrink into the background like I always had. But then, I felt his thumb brush over my knuckles, steady grounding. And I didn't let go. Nathan didn't look at anyone. He walked with quiet purpose, shoulders squared as though the weight of their stares didn't matter anymore. And maybe it didn't. Halfway down the hall, he stopped suddenly. I turned to look at him. His free hand went to the gold band on his left pocket, the engagement ring. He pulled it out slowly, turning it between his fingers. For a moment, he just stared at it, his expression unreadable. Then without a word, he slid it into his jacket pocket and looked at me. "I choose this," he said softly. Something broke in my chest, not in a painful way, but like a knot finally coming undone. We kept walking, past the rows of curious onlookers, past the floral arrangements, and the sound of string music drifting from the chapel, past the life he was supposed to step into, and out into the sunlight. The world outside felt different somehow. Lighter, brighter, free. Nathan stopped at the edge of the parking lot, turning to face me fully. "You don't have to say yes," he said, "but I needed you to know I'm done pretending. I want a life that's real, even if it's messy, even if it scares the hell out of me." I felt tears prick my eyes, not the sharp, aching kind I'd swallowed for years, but soft ones, warm and unhurried. "You really are sure?" I whispered. His hand tightened around mine. "I'm sure." The road stretched out before us, empty and quiet, like it had been waiting all along. Nathan's hands gripped the steering wheel lightly, but his knuckles weren't tense anymore. Neither were mine. And I sat in the passenger seat, my fingers tracing the edge of the crumpled envelope resting in my lap. The resignation letter I'd been so sure I'd leave behind as a clean exit. Instead, it was still with me. Like the past 4 years. Like every moment I'd spent loving him in silence. We didn't talk much as the car hummed down the highway, but it wasn't the heavy silence from before. This one felt softer, warmer, like we were learning to breathe again. The sun broke through the clouds, painting long, golden streaks across the asphalt. Nathan glanced at me briefly, his lips curling into the smallest, most unsteady smile I'd ever seen. "I still don't know where we're going," he said. "Me neither," I murmured. "But maybe that's okay." He nodded, his gaze returning to the road. In the quiet, my mind wandered. I thought of all the ways this could go wrong. The whispers, the judgment, the headlines, and the pain we'd left behind in that chapel, the woman he'd walked away from. But for the first time, none of it felt as terrifying as staying in the shadows. Maybe we would crash and burn. Maybe we weren't strong enough for the weight of this choice. But for the first time, I was ready to take the risk. Nathan reached over his hand, finding mine. His thumb brushed against my knuckles, steady and certain. "Whatever happens," he said quietly, "we'll figure it out." I smiled faintly, resting my head against the cool glass of the window. The world blurred past us trees' signs, fragments of a town we were leaving behind. And in my chest, something unfamiliar stirred. Not fear, not regret, but possibility. We may stumble, we may fall, but for the first time in my life, I'm willing to take that chance.